speak a little bit. So we're basically a back office firm. We don't do investment management, or, we're not strategic anyway. We're process oriented back office services, accounting, bill pay, kind of stuff like that. So in that space, we see a lot of what families are doing, just kind of watching and learning. So it's kind of interesting. We have about 6 billion under our care that we do the accounting for, from New York to California, and mainly in the US. We don't have any overseas. We have some overseas family offices, but they reside here in the US. So it's an interesting perspective. I get to see just kind of what people are doing. So I thought I'd kind of share some of what I see, and when I'm paying attention. But yeah, we started in 06. Mainly just a bunch of bookkeepers, accountants. There's about 65. We got 65 staff. We're in Fort Worth, Texas. And we're virtual kind of, back office solution for family systems. So so that's my kind of professional service background, but my family background, I'm 6th generation to a family in Texas that we still manage the assets at a cousin's level. I was their CFO for 11 years. Helped my cousin and I built the family office in the early 90s. And then now I'm just on a board for the family system. So I don't work there daily anymore, but my whole life has been around family systems. We didn't family office, the term family office, really, that kind of came up, later in life. We just call them management companies. You're just managing family assets, trusts, partnerships, usually illiquids, like land, ranch, minerals, timber, stuff, or shared assets like vacation, legacy assets that are shared by family. That's my background starting out in the 90s. That's what a family office is. But as you all know, that trend has kind of shifted and changed, where there's, there's multifamily offices. Sincere Capital's here from Austin. They're our multifamily office rep, and we work with them. They're awesome. And real boutique, kind of focus on just certain family, alternatives and assets. And we've seen the rise of that. Some of you all are in that space. And that's kind of fascinating. So I'm not really sure what a family office is anymore. I'll just be honest with you. It's evolved. Okay, so some things that I wanted to share with you guys for the family office folks that I've seen that works. Kind of defining, if it's new liquidity, kind of defining the purpose of your family office. What do you want it to, what problem you want it to solve? What itch do you want it to scratch? Is it to provide a framework for your kids, to kind of to own, control illiquid assets together? Is it for confidentiality? Has this become your job because you sold some, operating company and you still want to work? Typically estate planning drives a lot of what family office, the purpose of family offices. The point I would want to make to you all is, don't let the tail wag the dog. Make sure whatever, define your purpose for your generation. Your kids will define their purpose when they become controlling in the family system. But define it for your generation, if you're building it or if you're absorbing it or inheriting a family office, and tweak it to the needs of the family, the current generation and the future generation as you see it. Because otherwise it's just kind of a big waste of time, and you could be doing a lot of work and for really not knowing why. So and I've seen that happen a lot, where people don't really have a defined purpose. They just do it because their dad did it or their grandfather did it. And it's like every generation has the opportunity to kind of define it on their own, and why they're doing it together. So I would say, that needs to be visited quite a bit. Your culture, always define your culture. I've seen a lot of family offices since the early 90s. You have your young, trendy, tech drivens to, your active, your passive, outdoorsy, or you don't care, you work from home. That's kind of the new thing with flex, or you old school where, you're kind of the 1980s cherry wood desks and wallpaper in your office. So I mean, I've seen families, new wealth families, that are in kind of hospitality space, and they create their family office and they have somebody up front with flowers on their desk. And it's like, why do you have that? I mean, you should have a wall up with a camera, pointing outside, asking who you are, as people come in the door. I mean, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you need to reverse, you're now a target. So, it's just, but whatever background created the wealth, typically is the culture of the family office. And sometimes just different perspectives give those people some like, oh yeah, I didn't think about it that way. Why do you do certain things certain ways? So we have one client in Colorado that their family office is under a parking lot in a secret door, and it's tremendously private. And that's why they have the purpose of their family office for confidentiality, obviously. And so it's just there's 31 flavors of ice cream, guys. So anyway, the trend today that we've seen, and I mean, it's our business model, is people are outsourcing more. The younger generations have more tendency to outsource, because now what you're seeing is the executives coming into family offices usually have a private equity background. And private equity is big in outsourcing the process side of things. So where probably 10, 15 years ago, I mean, we're, knocking on a lot of doors trying to get people to understand you can outsource family office services. Now it's pretty much a given. It's people don't want to hire, especially if you're in New York City or in your Aspen. It's hard to find a bookkeeper, that's going to be, you don't need a high level employee. You need somebody that's good at, bookkeeping or process related tasks. And sometimes those cities are hard to find those people. What I would say is in-house or fractionalize your strategic people, your CFO, your CIO. If you're not big enough to hire full time, then use a multifamily office or a fractional CIO to help you kind of, make decisions, investment decisions, because there are a lot of directions you can go. And that's another thing I would say is have a strategy. The families that we work with that have a defined strategy, or, the old good to great book, Hedgehog, what you're good at, what you make money doing, what you like doing, that Venn diagram, kind of putting words to that or picture to that can help a family guide their, their investment policy, their distribution policies, what you need to have. Because otherwise, I mean, you just really have, your sharp left and right turns. So the families that I see that are very successful across generations have a strategy, a written investment policy. They have distribution policies that are communicated to the family members, so there's no guessing game. There's budgets that show family members what is projected, what money is tagged to reinvestment and why. Those kind of things. You don't want to let people guessing at that stuff, because a lot of family members aren't active in their family office. They hire, executives to do that, and that's great. But they need to understand, kind of here's how it works. Here's what this trust is about. Here's what's distributable. Here's what's reinvested. Here's the purpose of the trust or the partnership that with my siblings or cousins. The people that are actively kind of communicating that are very successful over the generations. I think some other like family employment policies, there's not, family offices, there's not a lot of employees in family offices, but if you do have, maybe an operating business still attached to a family office, I would develop a family employment policy. So, the last thing you want to do is screw up family harmony, and that sometimes can affect the value and the wealth, underlying wealth of a family system. But in general, people don't want that. They want their kids to be happy and find their own purpose. And so sometimes not having rules around hiring your kids can have unintended consequences. So one thing that I've seen families do in the last couple of years, which is fascinating, is a kind of like an annual summit meeting, where you get together your key. It doesn't have to be every advisor or manager, but probably the 80-20 rule. who are the 20% managing 80% of our wealth. Let's get them in a room once a year at least. And let's invite the passive owners or the next generation into the room and hear what they're doing, and always kind of hear the, the three areas is, here's where we've been in the last year, here's what it looks like today, and here's where we think it's going with whatever asset class, whether it's oil and gas or real estate or, crypto, whatever, whatever those key managers you want to bring in, and allow them to kind of go through those three areas. And the patriarch, matriarch that's actively involved may know these things. I would always, want to have the spouses involved, the kids. Open up the door to in-laws if you want to. They're going to hear about it at the pillow talk anyway, so might as well bring them in. And so that's my 2 cents on communication and having meetings. We do those. We have a board meeting every quarter. Our family does. We have outside advisors. We have
Just keep on going.
Okay. And we have policies and guidelines and parliamentary procedure for voting. We're a corporation basically, and we have a rotating board, and that didn't happen overnight. It took 20 years to develop that in our family systems, a lot of meetings. And it's hard, working with family members, to make these decisions. Okay, there we go. Thanks. All right, so that's enough about strategy, and purpose and defining your culture. I think technology is changing at a rapid pace. It seems like in the last 5 to 10 years, one thing I've seen, there's not really a holistic resource for an in-house family system to go to for their back office. And it's unfortunate because there's some great software, there's some great AI products, there's great ERP systems and data aggregation, and whether it's oil and gas or investments or private equity, but none of them really talk to each other. Unfortunately, you got to develop APIs to make them all talk to each other. It's expensive, it's complex. So there's a lot of great silos of technology that are really kind of starting to focus on family office assets and their needs. And I guess the next stage would be hopefully for some of those to start, speaking the same language, so that all comes back into the general ledger, and you can get, kind of 30,000 foot reports from that, or reconcile to the bank statements, not just investment reports that are aggregating your investments. I'm talking about the whole, thing, from personal assets and bills you're paying for utilities, and, insurance policies and car registrations. Well, APIs will do it. So there's ERP systems that'll do it, like Microsoft Dynamics and something. And there's Sage, there's a bunch of them out there. And then there's like Adapar. You need an integrated solution. You need an integrated solution. Yeah. So there's Adapar. That's great on the investment side, especially alternatives. And probably some of y'all use Adapars, Black Diamond, there's all kinds of, so getting those two to talk to each other is kind of hard. So what you do is you start reconciling those in a silo. And if you're a family office, maybe that time's fine. So you're not competing for time.
Open interfaces.
Open interfaces with what?
Those systems.
You can develop APIs between the two because it's SQL based.
Oh.
But like a typical family office that didn't have a tech background. They're
right.
Sounds
like a good opportunity. It's
a great opportunity. So anyway, that's what we're seeing on the accounting side is. Because we're doing the document management coming in, we're opening their mail. If it's a bill, it goes into this workflow. If it's a division order for oil and gas, it goes into this order. If it's a car registration or insurance cards, it goes into, so it's just a processing.
So you have a workflow dashboard with APIs.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one place to see all this stuff. That's an opportunity for somebody. If you have a tech background, go for it. So anyway, that's something I see is needed. And there are some people that say they do that, and we've looked at them and they don't. It's there's a login for everything, right? And our clients hate logins. Like, I got another login, to get into that, to see that. Just give me one login, So anyway, so technology's changing, let's see, the other side of it that I've seen over the years, when we go in to see some of these, typically change happens in existing family offices. Somebody retires, key man in the back office, CFO, controller, or a CEO or COO is retiring. And so it's interesting for us to kind of come in and see the picture that is taken when that person is retiring. They've been there 20, 30 years. Usually the technology got stuck 10 years ago. They're in a lot of Excel spreadsheets and they're in QuickBooks and there's filing cabinets in rooms and there's paper on desks and it works, right? They have a system and a process that works. And it always, my IT guy, we're always kind of scratching our head going, oh my gosh, we could cut 4 employees off their payroll immediately with just this one thing and this technology's been out for 10 years, they just don't know about it. So it's just, it's fascinating to walk into that. And I've thought over the years, why does that happen? And there's 2 things that seem to come up. Well, family office, there's no drive to compete. It's not like an operating company in some industry. It's competing with others for margins and, and all that. Family offices, each of them have their own purpose. They're just really trying to just manage family assets, right? So their drive for innovation in the back office systems never has been there. They find some system that works, they get the reports they want to make their decisions, and they just stick with it.
You get used to stuff.
They get used to stuff. Next thing you know, you got 8 people back in the accounting department doing all this stuff manually, and only Susie or Billy knows how to update this one spreadsheet, because it's got all these formulas and macros. And so, yeah, that's normal. That is fascinating, but that every, whenever we come into an older family office, that's typically the picture we see. There was one we went into and there's a lady at the front desk smoking a cigarette, typing on a typewriter. This is like in the last 5 years. How can I help you? How can we help you? Yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating. They had a whole floor of on top of the building, and that whole office is gone now. I mean, we've eliminated it. Just technology, and it's not like we're, leading edge technology. We're just using what's going on. Yeah, fascinating. Okay.
Cigarettes killed them all.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's So we grew up, our family in the real estate business, and so when I went to work for my dad in the early 90s, it still had that 80s, where you go into a boardroom, there's a bar in the boardroom, with like whiskey, you want to drink? And my dad didn't drink. But everybody they did business with in the real estate is probably the same oil and gas, but cigars and whiskey. And it's like, holy moly, it's just like, I can't, it's a whole different world. So it evolves, right? It evolves. Yeah, we get healthier. But anyway, that was what this place reminded me of. It was all right. So the rise of the boutiques is something I've seen over the last couple years. The people that's been with the Goldmans and the bigger firms that have a Jerry Maguire paper they wrote late one night, saying, hey, fewer clients and better service, and they go off and do their own thing. I've seen that. I've seen in San Francisco and New York, here in Austin, Sincera is doing it. I mean, it's fascinating to see that. And for us, since we don't do investment management, these are our biggest centers of influence because they want to focus on one type of investment class or group of clients, and they don't want all this other stuff. So it's awesome. So we love working with them. And I do think from what I've seen, our clients are that use boutiques in certain wealth areas are getting a lot better service than the bigger banks that are trying to do everything. So peer-to-peer networking, man, that's just been on the rise. And Marty, just keeping up with you over the years. Wow. I mean, it's, family offices, 10 years ago were probably hard to get out of the woodworks. Now it's like, hey, we're all peer-to-peer. Let's go talk. Let's go see what's going on.
The number has doubled.
Has it really?
Over the 20,000 family offices in the United States. Sorry, just out of curiosity, has Zoom helped you? We'll discuss it offline. Okay.
But I would.
There is a new startup.
It's his show. It's Clint.
No, I'm fascinated by it because I really think it's helped families understand, like if you've had a liquidity event, like what do I do? What do I do now? You know, well, you go talk to other family offices and you learn what they've done, and you find your flavor of ice cream you like, and you mix two together and you go build it. There's no real book you can read. You just really need to define it yourself.
I mean, I think there's a difference between the families with the entrepreneurs involved, the guy who created the wealth, versus the next generation.
Yeah,
Right?
inheritance.
I mean, it's really it's a whole different outlook and way of looking at things. And also, I think that family offices today are being driven a lot by virtualization.
Yeah.
A lot of virtual family offices and distributed family offices where multiple states, multiple countries, you know, et cetera. And that whole dynamic has changed, and people are more hard charging about what they want out of their family offices than ever before, I think. So
yeah, used to be very kind of like, hey, here's whatever dad wanted or whatever. Yeah, and there was a group from California here that they have a family out. They were at dinner last night. They have an office here in Austin and in California. You know, it's like, hey, we'll work remotely. You know, I love it. It's fascinating and so, but I do think the education and the networking has been on the rise in my lifetime. Crazy. And so the peer-to-peer on the investment front, again, we don't do investment management. It just kind of what I see or hear, you know, when clients are coming in either complaining or bragging about something or, you know, so it's you know, the legacy assets seem to be at risk, you know, over time. It's nothing new there. That's every generational kind of things that your grandfather or great grandfather had may not be what your kids want today or tomorrow. And typically the ones that are at risk are illiquid, kind of value driven, you know, whether it's a vacation home that's, you know, now worth $2, $3, $4, $6 million, or a ranch, you know, that it's great, but nobody really goes out there. It costs us money, but it's worth $500 million, you know? And so let's get rid of that. Let's put that in the S&P 500 and go on down the road, you know? So those discussions, I see a lot of those over the years, and they're continuing today. We got one family today. It's talking about big ranch, and it's a legacy asset. And it does create some fractures in family harmony if it's not addressed, you know, properly. So it's a tough conversation to have. But that's blockchain. I hear, you know, blockchain. I'm in that MIT course. I'm on module 3. I mean, I don't know anything about blockchain. It's like, what? So I'm like
4 more weeks to go.
4 weeks to go. Yeah, learn about initial coin offerings, you know, and regulation and all this good stuff. It's crazy, but I feel like it's just this, you know, Wild West, you know, and there's something there. There's something to it. There's some really good technology behind this, and there's some bad actors as well. So you just it's kind of like the internet of the 90s, you know. It's like there's some really good things here, and a lot of people believe in that, but who's the Netscape navigator, you know, and American Online or the Google, you know? It's like, I don't know, they all look the same.
Talking about the US dollar here.
Yeah. I don't, again, when it comes to currencies, whether it's a decentralized currency versus something that's controlled, you know. Yeah, I do. So I'm just fire hose learning there because we have clients that want to know about it. We have a whole tax department, so and you know we're learning about it on the tax side too, you know, because this is coming up. So and I'm not a tax guy, my partner is, but so let's see. Real estate's on fire, has been. We haven't seen a bubble in that since the 08, 09. So we're due for one. But gosh, Texas is just crazy. So we do about over 2.5 billion today under construction. We're doing the accounting for. Most of it's in Texas.
Really?
Unbelievable. And that hadn't stopped. It's been constantly, you know, and so we have some going to California, Phoenix, you know, is hot, but for the most part, again, we're just doing the bookkeeping, bill pay, and, you know, the draws for the construction draws. So we're just seeing that hasn't slowed down since 2011. You know, it's just been on fire. Oil and gas, man almighty, Jay, I feel for you. That's you know, it's so 2000, what was it, January of 2015, that thing just come crashing down. Yeah. And so we do the accounting for over 10,000 oil and gas wells for our family systems. Really? So a lot of oil and gas. We have a whole department that does oil and gas accounting. We use OGIS, I was telling y'all last night. And it's a lot of, so again, we're not invested in it. We're just doing the accounting and reporting for it. And about half of the assets are family legacy kind of assets. They were inherited, into the 5th generation. And the other half are private equity, kind of they're somebody raising money, whether it's a family or, or a fund, and got investors in it. And so to us, doesn't matter, it's accounting. So we're watching that, but it's been interesting. So we've had during the COVID, when oil was, $30-40, we had families wanting to get out of it and trying to sell the stuff. And there's just no capital. There was no capital for it. And they would accept the pricing if they just, use the metrics of oil and gas pricing. They would, but there was just no capital. So there was all these sharks coming in, lowballing and throwing lowball offers at this stuff. And they're like, we're not going to do that. Yeah. And then, now it's a whole different story. And so it's just crazy. Oil and gas is it's fascinating to me. And I agree with Jay. I don't think it's going away anytime soon, but we are looking at carbon recapture. I'm going to the conferences. I'm going to the wind conferences and the solar conferences because next generations are looking for greener investments. And since we're an accounting firm, I'm following it. So,
but you're more than just an accounting firm. We have time for questions.
We've got time for a question.
So you're an accounting firm that became into you're taking care of everybody's money from the standpoint of CPA, wealth. You're not doing the
no wealth management.
No wealth management. I thought you said wealth management.
Nah, just
But
accounting.
So what is your firm doing? What are you looking for?
We'll just do our competition is in-house staff that does bill pay, payroll, bookkeeping, bank recs, investment aggregation reporting. That's what we do. Outsource bookkeeping at complex levels. So our average client has probably 30 entities, 30 bank accounts, so it's not QuickBooks. It's your ERP systems that can do consolidated reporting.
Okay.
So that's generally our thing. So we don't have a lot of clients. We have 30 family offices that we work